Rev up your engines! With the price of new cars going sky high, many people today are taking the option of buying a used car. But there's many crooks out there, and recently I've seen a lot of people get ripped off. So I'm going to show you the most common things you want to check so you don't get ripped off. Number one is bring a scan tool. Any scan tool that can read codes. Modern cars are very complex. These give a heck of a lot of information. Here's a trick that people do, and here's how you can find out if they're trying to cheat you. You notice this toy the Matrix, there's no engine lights on. The brake light's on because I got the brake on, but aside from that, there's no check engine light on. But if you're looking at a used car, a dishonest seller will often use one of these scan tools, and they will say erase all codes. Yes, yes, it will erase all the codes. So, for the time being, the check engine light won't be on. But as we plug in the scan tool, simple thing, you just plug it in and turn the key on so the idiot lights are on but the car's not running. And watch this. This thing's flashing red. They should be green. Now they're flashing red because the whole system has just recently been reset. It's my wife's Matrix, you know, there's nothing wrong with it, but I reset it to show you what happens. And if you see lights are flashing and the check engine light is not on, that's a seatbelt light because I don't have it on, I'm lazy. Then these red lights are flashing because it's telling you that the car has not gone through its drive cycle to check if there's any problem. When someone erases the trouble codes, like I just did here, it erases everything, and in order for the computer to say the car is running correctly, the car has to go through what's called the drive cycle. Sometimes it could be as much as 100, 200 miles. Once it goes through the entire cycle, if there's no check engine light and no codes, it means it's okay. But sneaky people will reset them. You buy the car, drive it, and you find 100 miles or 150 miles later, check engine light comes on as a problem, then it's your problem because you bought the car. So if all the malfunction indicator lamps aren't green, they should all be green. Some are red, don't buy the car. It's too much of a chance. And another trick is guys will take the check engine light bulb or the LED on modern cars out, so the check engine light will never come on because there's no bulb there anymore. Now to test that, it's a simple test. You simply turn the ignition switch on so the idiot light's on but the car isn't running, and you'll see, in this case, the check engine light should always light up. And then when you start the car, it goes off. Now, if it doesn't light up at all when you turn the key on, somebody's taken the bulb out or the LED, or the system itself has a computer failure. Either way, do not buy such a car. Just walk away. And of course, if you know a little bit about cars, with any scan tool, you can see is the car running rich or lean, is anything starting to act up, in which case you wouldn't want to buy the car. Now, the next thing you want to check is the suspension system, and the tires tell a lot. Look at the tires. As you can see now, you can see the full tire. You want to make sure that the tire has a lot of tread, in this case is quite a bit, and that it's evenly worn. When you look, you don't see scalloped ridges, or the inside is worn out more than the outside, meaning there's some kind of a problem in the suspension system. Now, tires themselves are a simple thing to replace, and if they're really bad, you'd pay less for a used car. But the tires tell you so much about what shape the car's suspension is in that you want to look at them closely. Now, say they're just flat worn out, but they're evenly worn out. Yeah, you need new tires. And here's a stinker that people do all the time that you want to watch out for. Let's say they're spanking brand new. Maybe there's a suspension problem in the car and that the new tires were to hide it because the old tires are so badly worn, they had to put new ones on. Now, often they'll put the cheapest tires they can, so look and see where they're made. Made in the USA. The Goodyear tires, they're good tires, but let's say they're brand new, spanking clean. They say made in China. Well, those are the cheapest tires you can buy. And let's think about it. If somebody's selling a car, why on earth would they put brand new tires on right before they sell it, other than there's a problem that they're trying to hide with the car having a suspension problem that wears the tires out? So in that case, here's what you do. Of course, you want to road test the car anyway. You know, if you're like me, you've been driving a long time, you may not know how to fix cars, but you know if it doesn't feel right, doesn't ride right. So take it for a ride and see how the suspension is. If you're driving down the road and you let go of the steering wheel and it pulls to one side or the other, it's got a serious suspension problem. Then when you come to a stop, see if it stops straight and doesn't bounce. You notice this didn't bounce at all. Bouncing, the struts are worn, all kinds of parts can be wrong. And of course, take it on a highway. You're driving down the road at highway speeds and it starts shaking, the suspension, you know something's off. And if you find that when you hit the brakes at high speeds and the steering wheel starts shaking, that means that your brake rotors are warped and you got to replace them. Now that's not that big of a deal, but at least you know what's wrong. But while you're driving down the road at highway speeds, listen, and if you hear whoa, 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 the wheel bearings are worn out. That can be very expensive, and you're going to hear it at high speeds. The faster you go, the more noise it'll make when the wheel bearings are worn out. When you're on a highway, listen for odd sounds. Say it goes smooth on the highway, but when you hit a bump going 60 and then the steering wheel starts shaking, that's another sign that your struts are worn out. When you're on a highway and in the city, watch the temperature gauge. It should run normal, anywhere from there to a little over halfway. You don't want to buy an overheating car. Cars can overheat for many reasons. You don't want a car that's got a head gasket blown. There's a lot of bad reasons that make a car overheat. If it's an overheating car, immediately go away and do not buy that car. If they say, oh, well, it's a simple fix, tell them, fix it. I'll come back when it's fixed, see if it's overheating or not. And of course, when you're road testing it, get it on some curvy roads and drive a little faster than normal. See how responsive it is. Let go of the wheel. Does it straighten? Yes. If it keeps going sideways and not straighten, it's got a steering problem. Stay away from it then. You can learn a lot from a little 10-15 minute road test. Just remember, do it in the city and on the highway. That's just what you want to do. Let's say it's almost out of gas. Heck, put $5 of gas in it. It's worth the $5 to do a good test so you don't spend thousands on a car that you'll regret later. And here's another tip. That's why you want to drive at city highway at least 15 minutes. Maybe it had oil leaks. They cleaned them all off. Well, you're going 70, 75 miles an hour. If it's leaking oil, drive the car. Park it on a clean driveway like this. And look under. If you see oil dripping, the leak came back. They may have cleaned the leak off, but if it comes right back, you're going to see oil or coolant or whatever dripping. It's a very good thing to check. Another great tip is look for markings. Open the hood and look all over the engine and transmission to see if there's any markings with white, yellow, whatever paint or chalk. Because junkyards always mark their stuff. Let's say it's got a used junkyard engine or used junkyard transmission. See a bunch of paint numbers on it? You know that's what happened. Do you really want to buy a car that's got a junkyard transmission or engine? You won't know what the mileage is. You won't know. Maybe they blew it up and they quick put the junkyard thing in and then sold it to you. It's a trick a lot of guys do. You can buy a car with a blown engine or tranny dirt cheap, $400 or $500. And then quick whip in a used engine or tranny and sell it. A lot of guys flip cars and make good money doing that, but it's a big gamble. You don't know what kind of shape that engine or tranny's in. It's a gigantic gamble buying a vehicle like that. Now, if it runs good otherwise and you don't mind taking a gamble, pay a lot less for it. Say, look, I know it's got a junkyard engine or tranny in it, but I'm not gonna pay that much money. Nobody knows the history of it. And the junkyards, they all lie. I know guys who rent junkyards will say, well, that engine's only got 90,000 miles. And then you see the truck that it came out of and it's like 190 or 250,000. You never know unless it's one that's been in it the whole time and then the odometer tells the truth. Now the next thing you want to check is the coolant. Now this little Prestone coolant checker's like $8 or so, costs nothing. Simple to use, just stick it in the radiator, suck some out. Now this shows that it's good too. Minus 45 degrees. I don't think it's gonna get that cold in Tennessee. Now coolant itself is cheap, easy to change, no big deal, but look, see how clean it is? It's the Toyota pink red coolant. You can look through, see me, it's very clean. Of course it's very clean because I flushed it out and replaced it. If you watch that video I made a month or so ago, if it's all dirty and corroded, sure, you can change it out, but that shows lack of maintenance. Coolant is cheap, but the damage that it does is not. It can eat the head gasket up. It can clog the interior passageways of the radiator. Dirty antifreeze can do all kinds of damage. You check that coolant, it's all filthy, I'd walk away from the car. Say, this car, not only could the coolant do damage, but that generally shows lack of proper maintenance in the car, and you don't want to buy it. And of course, the same goes true with engine oil. You want to make sure it's full and clean. This is clean because I just changed it. But if it's filthy, black, and especially if it's low, I wouldn't buy the car. Low means it's either burning or leaking oil. Now, if you see a little leak on something that doesn't look expensive, like a valve cover gasket, no big deal, right? If you don't see any leaks, especially if they don't drip on the ground, and it's low on oil, that means it's burning oil. You don't want to buy an oil burner. Engines cost a fortune to rebuild. Do not buy an oil burner. Now, if you suspect an oil burner and you're mechanically apt enough, pull out a spark plug. And if you pull it out and you see it's all covered with burnt carbon, it'll all be black carbon, don't buy that car. I had a customer just bought a used Lexus. It was a beautiful looking car. Started misfiring. I pulled it out. All the spark plugs were covered with carbon. It's an oil burning engine. If he would have brought it to me, I would have tested that and said, don't buy the car. So he's paid $9,500 for a car that's not worth it because the engine is going to cost a fortune to rebuild eventually. It might still run, but you don't want an oil burner that's got problems. Simple way to check it. And last but not least, check the title. Make sure it's in the person's name. Make sure that it says things like this: satisfactory proof of ownership having been submitted under Tennessee Code to the motor vehicle described as vested in the owner's name herein. And make sure it doesn't say reconditioned, salvage title. You don't want to buy a car that's been totaled by an insurance company, then resold. They only totaled them for really good reasons. Customer of mine bought a Volkswagen years ago. He showed me the title. It was a salvage title. He said, oh, it runs good, I don't care. Mind you, it was a whole year later, but a whole year later the car started going crazy and everything stopped working. The ignition system, the fuel system, everything stopped working. And I started checking and I pulled out the main computer and it was all rusted. Then I saw all the wiring modules were rusted. The car had obviously been flooded around Houston, probably near the ocean with salt water. It did take a whole year for it to completely knock the car out, but then he just took it to the junkyard. The car was worthless. Now, yes, you can save a ton of money buying a good used car if you use your head, but there's a lot of crooks out there, and now you know how you can find out if one of them is trying to sell you a car, so you just walk away and look somewhere else. Don't believe anything that somebody tells you. Word of mouth. Have it checked out by a mechanic, of course. But you can do a lot of these tests yourself first to see, hey, they're trying to scam me. I'll go on to the next one. I've had so many customers that brought me cars, and I said, look, in 2 minutes, don't buy it. That I teach them, here's what you check first. And if it meets your test, then bring it to me. And then I'll do it with a fine-tooth comb. Scan was pretty good. Oh, the tires are pretty good. Then you bring it to a mechanic, and they finalize the deal for you. Me, I hate seeing people getting ripped off, so now you know yet another way not to get ripped off, but still save money at the same time. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.